PANAF ECHO, the African perspective.
African geopolitics.
Unveiling South Africa's struggle, Thabo Mbeki exposes 30 years of hybrid warfare. Part 1, Awakening South Africa. In this pivotal segment, former President Thabo Mbeki delivers a compelling call to action, urging citizens to see through the propaganda and stand united.
Let me start by saying, I think one of the things that worries me a great deal is that I think as a country, we don't understand South Africa in the same way. I think we carry in our heads different South Africas. And hence come with different solutions of whatever the challenges are. Take this notion of 30 years of democracy. What has happened during these 30 years? I think one of the fascinating things about these 30 years is what has happened, differences in the different periods within these 30 years. That you can divide this history of 30 years into 3 ages. He calls it ages. There's age 1, age 2, and age 3. And says age 1 is from 1994 to 2007. And age 2 is from 2008 to 2022. And now we are drifting towards the conclusion of age 3. So Dr. Andres says, if you look at age 1, the country is going up all the time. He says if even you take the number of people employed, in 1994 we got 8 million people employed. By 2008 it's 14 million. So contest this assertion that is made that this was a period of jobless growth, because in fact there's enormous job creation during this period. Levels of unemployment dropped during this period. All manner of positive things. He gives all the detailed socio-economic figures to show this upward process. That's what he calls age number 1. Then as I was saying, he says age number 2 is from 2008 to 2022. And the direct opposite happens. So in these 30 years of democracy, we start off going this way, and from 2008 we could start going the opposite direction. And during age 1, the national government here is the ANC. During age 2, national government is the same party. So question arises, what happened that the same party is able to lead the country in this very positive way during age 1 and leads the country in the opposite direction in terms of age 2? As a puzzle, as a conundrum. If there was a change of party, another party took over, then we can explain it. But it's the same party. What happened? It's during this age 1 that we adopt our current constitution, 1996. And part of what happens during that first period is that we then put in place all the institutions that are required of this constitution. So whether we're talking constitutional court or public protector or the commission on gender and so on, gender issues and so on, all of these institutions, including the laws and regulations, come during this period. So this is a period, age number 1, according to Dr. Andres, not only of socio-economic progress, but also the very entrenchment, the definition of democracy in this country comes during this period. Challenges, even with regard to that, come during age number 2. I think this is a distinction that we need to make. Even in the context of voting on the 29th of May, I think we need to understand that context in order to be able to know who are we voting for. Who are these people?
Part 2, the destruction of a nation's backbone, Jacob Zuma's assault on the revenue services. In this eye-opening segment, we expose how former President Jacob Zuma and his corrupt government systematically dismantled the South African revenue services, jeopardizing the nation's financial stability.
There was a certain period when the South African revenue was outperforming itself in terms of collections. We'd always see this thing that there would be a forecast to say that SARS will collect R1 billion this year. At the end of the financial year, it's R1 billion plus. For a number of years, it was like this. And then during H2, it went the opposite direction. SARS started underperforming. So that raised the question, clearly there is something wrong. What is wrong? That's how the new Joint Commission of Inquiry, Judicial Commission, was appointed by President Ramaphosa. To answer this question, what has gone wrong? The new Joint Commission says, obviously I'm summarizing, that some people took a decision to destroy the institution. Now all of us will recall that what has happened during, for instance, the proceedings of the Zondo Commission. There's been a big focus on the matter of looting. For instance, state corporations, whether it's Denel or Eskom or the Transnet and so on, a lot of looting. The Gupta brothers and all of that. In this case of SARS, there was no looting. The new Joint Commission says there were people who took a decision to destroy the institution. Now that's a very remarkable statement in my view. Because SARS is responsible for 95-98% of state revenues. You destroy SARS, you destroy the democratic state. And yet there were people who took a decision to do exactly that. After reading the New Joint Commission report, one of the things that stood out was the absence of looting. Because there's a state agency, it collects all these billions of rand. And you would think that one of the targets that would be to steal. No, the intention was not to steal, but to destroy the institution. How would we explain that? That there would be people who would deliberately set out to seek an outcome of that kind. These are obviously people who are hostile to the very existence of that democratic state. They don't want it to succeed. So they intervene. If we take away these revenues, it won't be possible for the state to succeed. I'm saying it must be that there are people, those people, who are people who didn't like our democracy and wanted something else. I think what the importance of that New Joint Commission report is that it actually communicated a very important message which all of us in South Africa should understand. And exactly this central point, there were certain people in the country who deliberately set out to destroy this democratic state. Therefore, it's not everybody who celebrated 1994. There's certainly, to some of our fellow citizens, 1994 represented a defeat. And they did not accept that it's going to be a defeat. So it was a temporary defeat for them, but they knew that in time we will win. This is because for some reason, which I can't understand, the content of that report has not been widely reported in our media. It hasn't. The Zondo Commission looked again at the SARS issue. They looked at the outcome of the New Joint Commission of Inquiry on SARS, and they said, we agree with what that commission says and its outcomes. But we are going to look at the same question again because it's imperative in terms of our own mandate. And they did. And so again, we have this strange phenomenon. Mr. President, that what I'm now saying about what the Zondo Commission says about who was responsible for this attempt to destroy SARS includes the President of the Republic. That is new news. It isn't. And of course, you know who the President was. And it's also in black and white. Jacob Zuma was part of the leadership in the process of destroying SARS. That does not the President of the Republic of South Africa participating in a process to destroy the institution that gives him the means to govern. That's the kind of contradiction. The contradiction that then raises a question. Who indeed is this president? Because there is no way you're going to be able to square the circle that the President of the Republic of South Africa acts to destroy the South African Revenue Service. That is on the commission is entirely wrong, or we are dealing with somebody who is entirely wrong.
Part 3. Lights out, the sabotage of the electric infrastructure. Uncover the motives behind this deliberate sabotage and the impact it has on the frustrated population.
When we first had our first national power cut, when the country went blank because of ESCOM, what is called load shedding, the national. The first time it happened was in January 2008. You remember that even the mines had to shut down for the whole week. Again, apart from our panelists here, the older people would remember that at that time I was president. And the previous month of December 2007, either December or November 2007, I'd apologized publicly, because what had been happening is that you had regional instances of load shedding. So in November, December 2007, I apologized for that. So on behalf of the government, we apologize for this, because it's the reason for it is because there are certain things the government should have done and did not do. We delayed, and hence this apologies to the nation. I repeat, national power cut, January 2008. Many years later, I read in the newspapers that there's a report that has leaked which discusses the power failure of January 2008. And in reality, I was very wrong to apologize. Because what ESCOM did, the practice within ESCOM at the time, was that it had its own internal monitoring process about internal performance of the power stations. And the regulation was that each power station must have a minimum of 22 days supply of coal immediately with it, and not to go below that. So the internal monitoring system kept an eye on that. And already during December 2007, that monitoring system was telling the power station managers, you are running out of coal, replenish. And they didn't. What caused the power failure of January 2008 was the power stations ran out of coal. Because the power station coal managers at each station didn't respond to this alert from within this organization saying replenish. They didn't run out of coal. So you can't produce electricity in a coal-fired power station without coal. I saw this thing in a report in a newspaper. It was a leak. So naturally, as you'd imagine, I'm very interested in all of this. This was a leak from a report of a special investigation unit. There was an SIU that had been commissioned to study certain things at ESCOM. That SIU reported to the president in 2017 and said what I'm saying. That the reason for the power failure in January 2008 was easily avoidable. All you needed to do was to replenish the coal supplies at the power stations, that's all. The SIU report says, but they didn't do it, for whatever reason. That SIU report was never released publicly, to this day, still not been released. I'm saying the first national power failure at ESCOM had absolutely nothing to do with the narrative that is told. Notice that failure of government, it had nothing to do with failure of government. It was a deliberate decision from within the organization to produce that crisis. And one of the immediate consequences of that is, according to the procedures at ESCOM, they declared an emergency. And the emergency meant that in terms of coal, for instance, you didn't have to put out tenders and all of that. You just go and buy coal where it is available. That immediately doubled the price of coal. Immediately. And that report will also say some of those station managers pocketed something from that. I'm saying what the Nugent Commission particularly alerted us to, that there were some people in this country who did not like this democracy and sought to act in a negative manner to weaken it. I'm talking about ESCOM. We take a decision, the government takes a decision, 2004. Whereas we had been saying to Eskom, look, don't build new capacity, generating capacity, for a number of reasons. We changed that and said 2004, okay, please build. That's when the decision was made to build Kusile, Medupi, Ngula, these power stations. 2004. But the record will tell you that the construction of Medupi, the first one to go under construction, started in 2007. So the question that arises in my head, what's the delay? Decision get taken in 2004, implementation starts 3 years later. Why? It's not easy to find an answer to that question in terms of the Eskom reports that you'll see on the internet. But the reason is, in fact, let me say the reason. What happened was that they started to construct Medupi before 2007. Not surprising when the government says 2004, please build. But they had to stop the building, destroy what they constructed, because the companies that were paid and commissioned to prepare the building site for the building of Medupi didn't do their work properly. It's called geotechnical work. They didn't do their work properly. The result of which is when the construction of Medupi started, it sank. Had to be destroyed, more work done on the site. That delayed the construction of Medupi for 2 years. In my view, that's not an accident. That you'd have companies which normally are paid, they do this job all the time to prepare sites for construction of whatever, and they mess this one up so badly that it delays construction of Medupi by 2 years. I'm saying I don't think that's an accident. It's consistent with these people who intervened with regards to SARS. They were intervening with regard to the matter of electricity. Medupi, Kusile were supposed to have been completed by 2014. In which case there would never have been this electricity crisis. But Kusile is still not completed to this day. Why? 7 years after the construction of Kusile started, 7 years, it was not generating any, whatever you call that unit, of electricity after 7 years. Obviously, this is very embarrassing to anybody. So what Eskom did was to hire an Indian company, the Tata Brothers. Hire the Tata Brothers to come and build Unit 1 of Kusile. And the reason they did that is because that company had built another power station in India, which was more or less a replica of Kusile. So they came indeed and they built Unit 1 of Kusile. So at last, Kusile was generating electricity. So this company was expecting that their contract would then be extended to build Unit 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But Eskom said to them, no, we can't extend your contract unless you've got a BEE partner. So the Indians wanted to know, we brought 50 engineers and technicians from India, and the rest of the staff is staff at Eskom that we worked with. When you say we must have a BEE partner, how do you do that? Are there black engineers and technicians who can then come and become our partners? Maybe that's black empowerment. No, that wasn't working because already they had 120, 130 people under mentorship, engineers. Well, in the end, the matter couldn't be resolved of this BEE partner, so the Indians left. They finished their work in 2016. That Unit 1 of Kusile was integrated in the grid in 2017. I'm saying to this day, we have not finished constructing Kusile. And yet it's quite clear, if this business had not popped up of a BEE partner, Kusile would have been completed a long time ago. And I'm absolutely certain that whoever said to these Indians, get a BEE partner, it was not out of interest in terms of BEE matters. It was to delay the construction of Kusile.
Part 4, Dividing to Conquer, the plot to fragment unity. Uncover the insidious tactics employed by external forces to sow discord within South Africa's ruling party. In this revealing segment, we expose the attempts to corrupt influential leaders and create breakaway factions, threatening the unity of the ANC.
In order to understand this age number 2, according to Dr. Endres, where you then have all of these negatives, none of them are accidental. You cannot have an ANC government performing as it did during age number 1, and suddenly, in age 2, it behaves in the opposite direction. There's been a change somewhere. And that change includes a change in the leadership of the ANC. Let's say this ANC breakaways, coalition politics, and all of what we do about all of that. I'm saying in that context of what's been happening in the country, how do we understand the breakaways? Or just take the MK party. You can't say, I remain a member of the ANC, but I support a party which is going to campaign to defeat the ANC. That doesn't make sense. One of those two things is wrong. So in terms of these breakaways from the ANC, take that breakaway. You can understand it. It is led by the same people who tried to destroy SARS. It's exactly the same people. This is exactly the same people. So you can understand who they are. Take the Youth League of the ANC. Quite affected by all of this. At some point you have an ANC Youth League, which has got its own political platform. It's separate, different from the political platform of the ANC. It can't be ANC Youth League, it must be somebody else's Youth League. What happened? Suddenly you've got, the very popular thing. I think even my comrade president here referred to about land. There's established ANC policy, which is in the Freedom Charter. If you come to me to say, now let's still do something about the land, I'd say, bear in mind what we've said in that Freedom Charter for many decades. The land shall be shared among those who work it. That is a very well thought out position, strategic position with regard to solving a number of issues here. The national question, the land question, how do we handle it? No, somebody pops up. No. Let's take the land and give it to our people. So I say, I belong to the ANC. Who, according to the ANC in South Africa, is not our people? There's nobody who's not our people. That's ANC policy. Somebody else's policy might be very different. But that's why the ANC says this land shall be shared among those who work it. Black and white. I'm saying you have a youth league, which is called an ANC Youth League, which has got a very different policy from the ANC on this matter. Is it ANC? It's not. It's a youth league, sure, but a youth league of somewhere else. I'm trying to indicate, colleagues, what has happened, which has produced these two ages that Dr. Endres talks about. Age number 1, where everything is going this way, and age number 2, when things are going the other direction. Under the same political party, in terms of our response to all of these challenges about coalitions and so on, the question that we must ask, where do we want South Africa to be? Not where do we want the political parties to be, where do we want South Africa to be? In terms of employment, in terms of everything that we talk about, industrialization and so on. And who will get us there? You'll read all of the election manifestos, all of them without exception. There's all of them saying, we'll get you there. Whom do you believe? I think there's a major political struggle that has to take place here, in part based on a proper understanding of the state of the nation. Not the state of the nation as we wish it to be, but that it actually is.
Part 5, Locked Capital, Stunted Growth, the Economic Strangulation. In this final segment, we expose how strategic withholding of investment capital has become a weapon of economic oppression, stifling South Africa's growth and development.
You take these matters about industrialization, manufacturing, and so on. Leadership, comparison to China. Johan Rupert, very senior business person in the country, did an interview a few years back, I think with Power FM. And Johan Rupert said something which I was very, very glad he said it. He's generally a very honest person. speaks his mind. And he said there was a certain period in the country, as he describes it, is during this age one. We should have taken advantage of that situation to invest in the South African economy. We didn't. And the reason we didn't is because we were uncertain about its future. At some point I can tell the story now. We talked to the government of China because clothing and textiles here were suffering greatly because of imports from China. As you know, I was saying that you look around, all sorts of items of clothing are made in China. So we talked to the government of China to say, look, this industry of ours is dying because of imports from China. Please do something to stop this flow. I hope the Chinese government won't be angry with me for telling this story. They agreed. They said, all right. So they would intervene to reduce the flow of the Chinese exports to South Africa in order to help South African clothing and Eastern data to survive. And then said something which was very, very interesting to me. They said, part of what we will do, we will help your companies to catch up in terms of technology. Because they've fallen way behind in terms of technology in this sector. So that by the time we normalize the situation, they would have caught up with the rest of the world in terms of technological development. What had happened now, because of the thing that Johan Rupert is talking about, of a great reluctance by a major part of the capitalist sector to invest in the South African economy. What had happened in the clothing and industry, in the clothing and the textile and clothing sector, was that level of investment that dropped. That includes adoption of modern technologies. It was part of this general phenomenon of what Kossatu used to call an investment strike. Because in truth, a great part of capital in this country was very uncertain about the future of the country. This miracle that people talked about was too good to be true. One day there will be a big explosion. Therefore, why invest? That's part of the reason for the drop even in manufacturing. So I'm saying to answer those questions about industrialization, technological development, manufacturing, even leadership, you've got to discuss it within that context. Because these questions never arose during age one. There's no questions about leadership, about this and that and the other, because things were working. These matters arise, our questions arise now because things are going the other way. And that's a challenge we face as South Africans, to grapple with this reality, which has impacted in all elements of national life. You can go through each one of the state corporations, Eskom, Denel, Transnet. What has happened to all of them? And what has happened to all of them is not accidental. It's particular interventions to make sure that this democracy doesn't work.
Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more echoes of current affairs.